Amazing. All right. Are we live? Here we go.
All right,
everyone.
Hi there.
Good to see everybody. All right, good stuff. So excited to talk data today. And I think the world of data is evolving. We can jump into it in a second here. There's a bunch of questions that I want to ask, and then I think if there are specific things that each of you're all experts in this space, and so I'm just pulling out the knowledge nuggets from each of you. So feel free to chime in on any of these questions if I'm pointing them at somebody specific. But I think I'll just kind of set the stage up front, if that's cool, and then we can jump into some intros, and then we'll get into some questions. So I think the first thing that I just wanted to say up front is probably like many of us have been in go-to-market for the past 10 years, and we've seen a bunch of things shift. I think the last year or two in particular, things have gotten very crazy for a few different reasons. Kind of this growth at all costs thing is no longer here. A lot of headcount has been cut. A lot of budget has been cut. The playbook is kind of well known now. And so this commoditized data is not as interesting as it was maybe 6 years ago. And then the other thing is this little thing called AI that has popped up that has kind of just thrown a wrench into kind of everything as I see it, at least. And I'm sure you all have unique takes on that, and we'll get into it. But I think that there's like a bunch of things that are starting to emerge. And like my personal goal right now over the next coming months is like, what does work in this new world in go-to-market, and what data is interesting and what data is commoditized. And some of that is like, as CEOs and founders of companies, there's like a business angle to that. But then as operators, it's also like, well, what data should I be looking at as, a CRO or as a VP of marketing or, basically anybody on the go-to-market team. And so we'll get into that as well. Let's just start with some intros. Yuri, you want to kick us off, and then you can pass the mic? Maybe just like a quick 30-second intro would be helpful.
Of course. So, hey everyone, my name is Yuri. I'm the CEO and co-founder of AiSDR. The name of the company kind of explains what it does, right? So we automate sales outreach end-to-end, from finding the person to reach out to kind of creating personalized emails, delivering across email and LinkedIn, and then when they respond, corresponding, answering follow-up questions with the goal to book a meeting. There was a lot of heat about what we are doing in similar companies, so happy to discuss that on the call. But in the past couple of months, I've been knee-deep in data, right? So like analyzing different data providers because Apollo cut us off and we were looking for alternatives and kind of diversification. So I can share a lot of insights that I learned from that, and excited to be here with this amazing team on this call. Michael, over to you.
Yeah, Michael, I'm founder CEO of Ocean.io. We are a data platform, but we are fairly unique in being an AI data platform. We developed it ground up. It's not a ChatGPT wrapper on it. It's actually our own algorithm and our own trained models, which makes us stand out. And that's why, the hype is on LinkedIn and everyone using it. It is the accuracy. We are on our fifth generation of our algorithm, or series of algorithms, because it's really bundled together in the term when we train the models. And if you're, and I saw in some of the scripts that some of you wants to talk about the sixth version coming out, which is going to be a game changer for the market. But we are on a high right now because the whole micro targeting automation, the foundation is to a certain extent Ocean. So on to
Tito, good to meet you all.
Yeah.
I am CEO and co-founder of Koala. Maybe my background and lens on data is slightly different, which is I was at a company called Segment, which was the leading CDP bought by Twilio for $3 billion a couple years ago. I led engineering and product there. And my co-founder is also some of the most senior engineers at Segment. And we were sort of approaching this from the lens of like, hey, there's all of this really interesting data in CDP land. CDP's traditionally, or at least Segment CDP was a little bit more B2C focused. We're like, this data is super valuable for sellers, but it almost never ends up in the hands of sellers. And when you combine the sort of website data, product analytics data, data in the warehouse, what's happening on LinkedIn, what's happening on GitHub, like that gives you a little bit more of like a warm kind of in the store vibe. And we've gone very deep, I would say, in kind of those core data sources. And so, yeah, excited to share what we've been seeing, but that is Koala in a nutshell. Over to David.
All right. Thanks for the intro, Tito and Brendan, Yuri and Michael. Very honored to be on this panel with all of you. And from my side, so I'm the co-founder and CEO of The Swarm. I was previously at Sequoia Capital. They acquired my last startup. So I had a good chance to sort of see how they view the world and use data in interesting ways. The Swarm is helping to build the new category of the go-to-network platform. And that has evolved a lot over the last 3 years when we've been building it. And we've actually sort of evolved into being more of a data company ourselves. I'm happy to talk more about that. And we help companies to map and leverage their networks and to orchestrate the network that sits around a company, which is the go-to-network motion. But yeah, I'll pass the mic back to you, Brendan.
Awesome. Thank you all. I appreciate it. And yeah, I guess background on me, I started as SDR. I was an AE, a sales manager, started a couple companies in the sales tech space, and been at a couple big companies, Zoom and most recently Apollo. And now I'm writing a newsletter. So here we are and moderating webinars. So I'm excited to, I would say like, yeah, I think I kind of touched on this, but like I am very interested in how, in kind of this intersection of like science and art, right? And like data is kind of the thing that maybe to overgeneralize, like an engineer wants to use a bunch of data, and a salesperson is like, oh, there's more art to it, and probably the answer is there's something that there's the intersection of that is probably where it gets interesting. So maybe we could start there. Like as I look at a lot of the data, commoditized data, an email address, for instance, so the number of employees, I would call that kind of commoditized data. And, it's not super valuable, I would say, to some extent. But there are certain pieces of data, and Tito, we were talking about this a little bit last night, like I call this rich data or something. I would love to hear, maybe one of you or a couple of y'all, if you have a perspective on this, like what data is interesting today? What data is, what is data relevant today, or is it all commoditized? Who wants it?
So I can comment in a probably slightly different direction, right? So thinking about something so basic as a company size, right? So I was looking across a number of different parameters, across a number of different providers, right? And if you look at AiSDR as a company in different providers, right? So we have 21 people. Some will put us like at 0 to 10. Some would put us at 11 to 50. And there were even like many providers that do not have that parameter for us, right? So this is a very basic parameter, right? You're mentioning commoditized, very important, because the value prop for like 1150 company and like 500 people company, like very different. But this problem exists across like pretty much all the data sets I looked at, right? So if we start a conversation about data, we actually have to be honest with ourselves that, yeah, it's commoditized, but if you're looking for truly accurate, high quality, high coverage across different companies' data, like that does not exist, right? Like you have to build it. And honestly, compliments go to Michael, because like what I've seen in Ocean so far, I like it the most, right? Not perfect, but I like it the most. So thank you so much for building it. And then you can layer something that is useful for tools like ours, right? So AiSDR with like relevancy, personalization, et cetera. And for that, you need not a specific type of data, but you need to make sure that it's accurate and fresh, right? And the problems that come at that stage is companies and websites that have that data like prevent you from getting it, right? Because you're kind of stealing their thunder, right? And then on the other end, the mapping between like the person and data, right? So for example, if you would query like, I don't know, Perplexity for like Yuri Zaremba like short updates, you probably would find something, right? Like I'm active on LinkedIn, etc. But then recently I did the same for one of our prospects, and instead of a like leader of a B2B company, gave me a Marine veteran, right? So totally irrelevant. Or I ran like an update on a person who is supposed to work at a like large financial institution, but then it pulled the LinkedIn profile of a person who works at a massage salon, right? So what is this? How can you operate and talk about some levels of complexity if you don't get this kind of like basic accuracy? So that is, I think, core problem.
Maybe my take on where we've like sort of taken Koala is much more toward the first party data, because that is data that is private to you. And it's kind of crazy to me just like how much data ends up like lying around a company, and like it's sort of accessible. Maybe there's some like BI report or whatnot, but like the reality is, as sellers go to prep for the call, like there's not an hour worth of preparation to go like think about all of the places I could go look for this data and actually show up prepared. But I do definitely see our customers leaning a lot into this first party data set, thinking about everything they know about existing customers to run a cross-sell upsell strategy, everything they know about like what's happening on their own properties. And I think the state of the art of what's possible, you know, compared to the legacy ABM is pretty mind-blowing. But that whole collection of first-party data is sort of by definition never going to be a commodity. You know, I think there's definitely challenges, you know, that Yuri is talking about. We're nowhere close to commodity either for all of the publicly available stuff. But I think there's even just like different categories here, and some of that is categorically like your own data to go figure out what to do with. Now, the art piece of it, of like what you actually do when you see someone like in the store picking up this expensive object, like that also is hard, because we now have this new messaging paradigm we need to figure out. But I think from a data perspective, like that will never be commodity and is worth investing in.
Can you give like one specific example of that, Tito, or like one or two just quick examples, like a first party data?
Sure. One of the things that I love this micro campaign concept. One micro campaign that recently happened. One of our reps, she lives in New York, but she was visiting Boston, and so she knew a bunch of prospects who had given email addresses as part of the free trial. And then she also knew their IP address mapped to Boston. And so like, she just thought of like, oh, I wonder if I put like the visitor geo filter and then, you know, make sure that it's like a reasonably sized company. I think she booked like 5 meetings across 2 days. And sort of the micro campaign trigger was like, I'm going to be in Boston, you know, October 12th to 14th. I don't remember the exact dates, but like that was sort of the trigger. And then she was able to go use data that existed within the 4 walls in a reasonable amount of time. It took her, you know, less than a minute to build that list. And so I think that's like activating in kind of creative ways different types of data to go book meetings. And that's kind of looking at your own first party data.
Love it.
Yeah, I think just to expand on that, the sort of evolution that I've seen, right, is you've got the who do we contact, who are all our potential customers, and then how do we contact them, right? In who to contact, there's obviously the fit, which is the traditional filters that Yuri was sort of talking about, like company size and industry and titles and that kind of stuff. That's sort of like the legacy databases, you know, ZoomInfo when they first popped up. You carve out your filters, you've then got 1,000 companies, you then go and blast with the same, you know, approach of it's all the same how we contact them, which is like, you know, cold email, cold outbound. I think then what's sort of evolved is now all this like signals, and obviously Brendan, like, you know, this is, you know, something you've been preaching from the rooftops for years now, which is actually like, let's carve out the market that is actively looking, is actually maybe expressing some interest, right? So the signals that are available. And then I think what I see evolving now is the next sort of evolution of this is then how are we contacting them? And that data is now becoming more sophisticated. And there's this sort of evolution of the space where it's not just a blunt force instrument anymore, where instead you're sort of, you know, there's not a hammer, it's actually like a scalpel, but each customer is like unique in how they want to be contacted. Some people are happy for you to pick up the phone and give them a call, right? And I think, you know, Titan X and what Joey Gilkey are doing is great over there to carve out that part of the market. Other folks, they want to meet in person. Other folks, they want to get an intro from the network. Someone else maybe is open to cold outbound if you hit them at the right time when there's actively a pain point. I think previously it just took a lot of time to like build all these micro campaigns with the individual nuance for each customer. But now with AI and the data and the technology that exists, it actually gives you these superpowers to be able to almost customize for each person and each ICP how they want to be contacted and reached out to, which is super exciting. Obviously, it's great for a customer to not be blasted over the head, with this spam every morning when you wake up. I think we're not quite there yet, but I think it's an interesting and exciting kind of evolution of where the industry is going.
Yeah, I think context is everything, and I think we only seen the tip of the iceberg yet. I think we need to start to treat data like milk. It has a shelf life, and if we don't look at it that way, we're gonna sell sour milk to our customers. And I think that's the mindset we need in the get-go. Secondly, I think we, as I said, only seen the tip of the iceberg. If we start to use real AI on signals, which has not been used yet, then it's a whole different game. And I'm not going to disclose too much, but that's what I see as one of the aspects of taking AI now, is on the whole signal, because everyone talks about individual signals. But what AI can do for you is actually looking at the holistic pictures of signals and start to value them on a real-time basis. And I think that is on the signals, because I also see some of our friends at ZoomInfo and others, go all in on signals. But for me, it's like so last generation. It's like this is going in that direction, if you want. And again, micro campaign context. Tito, you had context of IP addresses in Boston. Is all about context. Whether that is a campaign of 10 or it's a campaign of 100, but it's creating context in a campaign on scale. And I think that is what is really where the market is right now. We see use cases of the individual AEs in sales enablement starting to grade individual deals, and then and we all know, being in sales, that you get so hung up on an individual deal that you forget to build pipeline from when that closed. And we see use cases where that pipeline is actually built completely automatic in order not to create that, hill and valley situation in your performance. And I think there is data commoditized? Yeah, if you don't treat it like milk.
I would love to stay on that point for a minute here. I love the analogy, by the way. It's a good one. I think that's right. I mean, I've started to I think micro campaigns make sense. It feels like it feels like an evolution. Signals is you should definitely be thinking about signals. Some of that stuff maybe is commoditized, maybe not. I think where I think micro campaigns is very interesting is like the example you just gave, Tito, where it's like it's a tight list, it's very timely, and it's like a creative experiment, right? It's like this person, I don't know this person, but I can tell you they're very smart, how they thought about this. Like to come up with this experiment, you have to be thoughtful about it. You have to be creative, and that's going to become the bottleneck. And then how you build it, you can use AI agents to scale it or to find the data. You don't have to manually go search through your list of 100 target accounts to find the 5 that are in that geolocation in that example. But I think that's like the way, I think there's staying power, because the way to run micro campaigns it requires a level of kind of sophistication and creativity and thoughtfulness. Are there other, maybe anyone can answer this, but maybe Tito and Michael, you've seen this firsthand. Like, what are other micro campaigns that you've seen, and like, how do you think about this potentially evolving, or how people can adopt it if they're not doing it today?
Yeah, I mean, I think like another example that comes to mind, one of our larger customers is like trying to bring their Act 2 product to market right now. So they have like a AI product, they're at about 100 million ARR, is growing nicely, but they have like an Act 2 thing. And so they have like a SEAL Team 6 type thing of like a couple AEs like trying to figure out how to go pitch this thing. And so their micro campaigns here are all around like, we need to know who is using the free version of this new thing. And then they're doing like a crazy amount of iteration on the message because they don't quite know the outbound message, but they know that they want to like talk to the people like roughly trying it and then, experiment with 5 or 10 different ones, because like that kind of warm list is the lowest hanging fruit before you start to go do like a colder touch point. I mean, it resonates actually as we found our own product market fit a couple of years ago. Like we were upset. One of the things that's interesting is like people will lie to you in sales calls and they'll pretend they're really interested in it and then they'll never ever come back. And so like even just the hard data of like what happened on the other side. So anyway, I think there's an interesting use case when you're kind of early as well and you're having like a micro campaign of like, okay, these people seem semi-interested. Now I need to go try a bunch of different messaging. And again, that's sort of more of like a usage-based micro campaign or a localized usage-based micro campaign of like they're interested in this particular part of the product or they're interested in this particular technical doc. So we've seen a lot of success on sort of that class of micro campaigns, but it does take a lot of creativity. Actually, one question I wanted to pose is like, who comes up with these micro campaigns? I know there's sort of the GTM engineer that is like a concept we're excited about. I think at Koala, our thesis is a little bit more like we need to enable the entire field to come up with their own micro campaigns. But I've been talking for a while, so I'll hand it off. But I would love to talk about like who comes up with these and everyone's kind of thesis on that at some point.
We have a couple of really interesting examples of micro campaign because micro campaigns and scale, it needs to go hand in hand. And there are a couple of our customers, API customers, is that's connected into their customer CRM system. I actually have built automation for a close one, initiating an automatic campaign for the lookalikes to that close one, incorporating the text where it actually, portray what they can do and using the close one by name as the door to that micro campaign. And that is done entirely automatic. That means close one, ChatGPT together with Ocean builds the whole campaign, shoots it off in a sequencer. We're talking about 100 emails maybe, but it's highly relevant. And we have seen quite a few of those. I've seen campaigns like email, or IP resolution, turning around to outreach campaign for the lookalikes of those visiting after a score. So all these things on scale is what we see right now as the big trend in creating those very relevant micro campaign, but having a lot of them going out.
And who created those micro campaigns? Sorry, just before we go to you, Yuri, who created those micro campaigns? What title at the company was building that micro campaign? Was it ops? Was it the sales leader, SDR leader? Like what person came up with that idea and built that?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
This is, if you look to Get Cargo, one of our customers, they are offering that as a service to their customers.
I see. Okay, cool.
That means, but it's the underlying is Ocean. That means they can use Ocean, right. But they built the whole flow in order, including the sequencing and everything else. Once that's built, each time there's a close one, it kicks it off.
Got it. Yuri, what were you going to say? Sorry, I cut you off.
Yeah, I was just saying that I'm going to go and launch a campaign like that after this call, because this is a brilliant idea. Because I've been always using the closed lost reactivation, right? Where basically you can just interact with people you already met. And I know the kind of lookalike play generally, right? Where you like I always use case studies, right? So I have my case study customers, right? And then I use lookalikes, and then I launch an audience. But this kind of automation with closed one, like this is brilliant, right? Because you kind of, it's a flywheel. You close a deal, you generate a few more, right? So thank you for that.
If you in your inbox saw an email from Ocean, we just closed 11x. It's like you're gonna pay attention.
Probably, right? Something that I wanted to say on those micro campaigns, like a person I'm following is like Jordan Crawford. I think you may know him as well. Like the campaign that really stuck with me because it was so non-trivial, right? And where he wrote a video where he basically used clay agents to like go to Zillow, look for like low cost properties, analyze pictures in those properties, and then try to understand which have like electrical wiring problem, and then like create a campaign to electrical engineers in that industry saying like, hey, I have a lead with you that have this problem, like, would you be interested, right? And this is insane, right? That A, this is possible these days. B, that this is like a fully automated AI campaign that is highly precise for a totally non-digital industry, right? So, and this is, for me, is just kind of mind-blowing. And I think the way it's going to play out is, A, like people will be lazy about it, right? And I'm going to help them be lazy there, right? We'll basically have a library of plays, like closed one reactivation, website visitor lookalikes, whatever, where you can just
I'm glad I got you inspired, Yuri.
No, I had that in my mind, right? You just gave me another one, right? So like, I now have like more. So we will have this library of like out of the box plays, and then there will be people who are like artists, right? Who would like, this is all bullshit. Like everyone is doing this. I'm gonna build my own play, but there will be so few. Because of the kind of genuine out of the box thinking and that you have to do this.
I agree.
I love it. I'm going to transition here, but before we move on, any other thoughts on micro campaigns that anyone wants to add? Okay, cool. So I think one thing that's interesting to me, you know, we all kind of know you got to figure out which company to reach out to, which person to reach out, when to reach out, what to say, and then how to say it. I want to talk a little bit about like, okay, let's say even in the context of a micro campaign or whatever, an ICP, you know, some list that you've got, let's say it's 150 people. You know, well, maybe we don't go too deep down this, but like, I think, you know, cold email is getting harder. We'll just leave it at that for now. I think we can all agree on that. David, I know you have kind of this concept of sales data 2.0, and as I see the swarm, it's like, okay, I've got this list of 150 people. I've spent a lot of time thoughtfully crafting this list, and it's milk. It's good right now. I got to reach out this week, but email kind of sucks right now. And so like, how do I actually make sure that I get in front of that person? I know what I have to offer them is valuable. David, can you talk a little bit about like how you think about sales data 2.0 and you know, obviously like how to use your network to get in is like a massive channel for that. How would you think about, how are you seeing that evolve right now?
Yeah, for sure. So, you know, you've got your list of target accounts, and then maybe you've filtered that down by the folks who have intent signals and they are showing some interest, you know, in the market, however you pick that up, first, third party data, whatever it is. I think the next step is there shouldn't just be a blanket engagement strategy for everyone. The engagement strategy should be determined by your relationships. And what I mean by that is how many of these target accounts do you actually have warm intro paths into? And that's where you can use a platform like the Swarm, or, you know, you can do the old way of going on LinkedIn and looking at mutual connections. And, you know, but can we get a warm intro into this target account? Because that's going to convert to a meeting anywhere from 10 to 50x higher, depending on your brand and, you know, everything else, right? So it's worth spending more time to research and you know, determine whether you have that warm intro path in. By the way, warm intro isn't always to the ICP. I think this is a big like pitfall that a lot of people fall into, is that they're like, oh, we don't have a direct path to the VP of sales. But guess what? You have a really strong relationship with one of the senior AEs there, maybe, and then you can go to them and say, hey, can you pass this along to your VP of sales? They say, hey, man, cool, yeah, you know, all good, happy to do it. And then they pass along, get the buy-in, and then convert to meeting. The same thing is true, though, not just to the top of funnel, but also at the bottom of the funnel, right? Multi-threading, setting up parallel conversations it shouldn't just be this like one-time blast of your network to set up meetings, but this the full life cycle of a customer, also through once they've closed, to actually use all your influence as a company. And I think that's the evolution of where this is heading. Like, it's still a bit manual, I'll be honest, today to like do this, and that's why I think most people aren't doing it, because there is friction involved. We're doing our best to try and remove all the friction and make this as like delightful and automated as possible. But the results do kind of speak for themselves, and everyone kind of knows that if you get a referral in, that's going to convert way higher than if you're just a cold, undifferentiated message in the inbox.
Love it. Yeah. By the way, when people close a deal, do they also like that? That feels like a great spot to just go. Like, when I close a deal, it's like, okay, what are the 5 companies that they know on my target account list that I should just go ask for a referral right now? This is like when they're very happy with us. Yeah.
That's another like close one
automated.
Yeah, exactly. So you map right, and then
that'll be a play this afternoon in the library of Yuri's place.
Yuri's going to spit it up this afternoon. Yeah, exactly. But map the customer network, right, and then find ICP fits. Go to them, say, can you introduce us to these 5 people? And by the way, incentivize them. Don't just be like, hey, can you do it for free out of the good, of your own heart? I think Scott Leese has a great playbook for this, which is all around paid advisors. It can be paid for intros, a percentage rev share. Maybe they don't want monetary, maybe they just want some recognition. Give them a shout out on LinkedIn, send them some swag. There's all kinds of different things that you can do just to make people feel good about giving a referral. And they do it once, they're way more likely to do it again as well. So set up a motion, do it monthly, get in a cadence. It's not just your customers. Every time you bring on a new customer, you should be doing this, but also your investors, your advisors, everything else. And I think once you kind of start building that muscle as a firm, it becomes more ingrained in the DNA of the company and becomes easier and easier.
Amazing. Tito, I know we've talked a little bit about like how AI impacts, I think, like ICs, right? Like AEs, AMs, how are they leveraging it? You've talked a little bit to me about like, maybe AEs can build their own micro campaigns and like what data they have access to. It's kind of like, that's the foundational thing, is like, do they have the access to the data that they need? Can you talk to like how you're seeing that, or maybe like, take us into the future in a year or two, or I don't know, 2 months, maybe right now 2 years is too far ahead, but like, how do you think that evolves in the world of an AE? And maybe I'll just frame it kind of more explicitly. Like, I want to, maybe we can go to Yuri after this, but like, there's probably nuance here, but like, AiSDR bad, AiSDR good, like that's the take on LinkedIn. There's obviously more nuance, but I'd love to hear kind of juxtaposed against that, like, let's assume both exist. Where do you think AI and data fits into the world of like a really high paid strategic AE?
Yeah. So definitely, I think our ICP is higher. People who have our customers have higher ACVs of their customers. They want to be a little bit more slow, thoughtful, intentional, have a lot of like concern about sort of burning the brand. Like, that's our ICP. I think it's like very different, sort of the volume levels that you're kind of going after, how strategic the sale is, whatnot. One of the reasons we've been channel agnostic, in the sense that we're using AI to prioritize basically all of these different sources that exist within the company and some third-party sources, intent signal sources. But the AI stops after the like lead prep. So we'll like go pick the account. We'll see if there's any first-party contact level engagement. We'll then like prep those leads. And then we're like, okay, we're done here. AE, go figure out what you want to do. And I think that works well in a higher ACV, especially where you've spent, maybe millions of dollars to generate that demand in the first place. And then you want to be very cautious and thoughtful about how you go deploy it. It's actually probably not the right solution for companies that really need to go figure out all of the interesting things happening on the internet and like how to go make some fresh milk of a campaign to go after, and need to kind of repeat that all the time. So I think of it as maybe a little bit more cut on like what the sales cycle looks like for our customer, and sort of how strategic and complex and whatnot it needs to be. I would say looking into the future, I am really curious how channels evolve. And I think especially any channel that can be automated. I'd be curious to get Yuri's take on this. I have a fear that any channel that can be automated is like continuing to degrade right now, just because of the volume issue and the the cost of the volume having gone down another 10x beyond the outreach sales loft era, where I think the volume increased an order of magnitude. Now we're at like another order of magnitude. So anyway, I've been like hesitant to make a bet on the channel and really make a bet on like giving this smart human a ton of context and a ton of AI prep for their back office work, because I'm so uncertain about what happens over the channels. But I'd be curious to get Yuri's take on like what you're seeing in the channels and what you think happens, or how much you eventually need to get into like lead prep land, or if there's a bright future forever on the robotic or the automated channels.
I wouldn't say bright future, right? But it's inevitable, right? So like people can love it, people can hate it. It's happening because it's possible and because it doesn't take a lot of effort, right? And because it looks much nicer than most of the things people are doing manually, right? So, and then the question is only like on the business model for a company like mine and a company like yours, right? So people come to you, you give them good data, a lot of research, they are happy, they pay you. People come to me, they don't get meetings booked, regardless of whatever amazing job I did before that, they are unhappy, they churn, right? So this is kind of the level of business risk that we are kind of taking in this endeavor. And what I'm trying to figure out is essentially like in which segment, in which channel, in which style of messaging, what kind of plays I can try to book some meetings for everyone, right? Or like narrow it down to a category where I can book meetings predictably for that category. Because if I don't, they churn, right? And this is the difference between kind of AiSDR and Apollo, right? People buy Apollo, they figure it out, it fails, they blame it on themselves, right? They buy AiSDR, it fails, they blame it on us, right? And that's it. And this is kind of the paradigm shift that kind of complicates this entire concept. But in terms of channels, totally agree with you. Everything that can be automated will be automated. And what's going to happen is the number of channels is going to grow. And then you would need to increase the overall number of touch points. And something that David is doing, like the intro path, will become like the hack, right? Like at one point, LinkedIn was the hack to email, right? Then kind of LinkedIn now is becoming crowded as well. Cold call used to be looked down on, right? Now cold call is back, right? Because there are fewer people doing that because it's so hard, but it converts consistently. And there will be new things appearing, right? So we're thinking WhatsApp, we're thinking Instagram Direct, we're thinking like Twitter. So, and then eventually those 7-figure deals will be closed through intros and people flying to visit in person as it used to be 20 years ago, right? So we're kind of going the full cycle. It's just kind of technology enabled, right? And it's evolving. And the difference between the GTM motions is going to be the check size, right? And like, can you afford to fly to kind of meet in person, invite to a steak dinner? Can you afford to like send a gift basket branded like with unique chocolates printed with the face of the VP that is going to like make the purchasing decision? And that's what's gonna like change the market. But if you think about channels, the number one thing you have to remember is that the AiSDR that I'm building, the outreach template that someone is sending, and your perfectly crafted research email is landing in the same inbox.
Amazing. Yeah. One quick question, Richard. I was thinking the same thing, Richard from the chat. So channels will grow. I agree. I'm like, oh man, cold email. I don't know that I'm entirely bullish on cold email over time. Let's see, but seems like it's going to get automated away and then just be super crowded. Yeah, the holy grail is like, okay, what is the new channel? Is there going to be some new LinkedIn that pops up and like, okay, that's now untapped and we have 5 years to go, you know, take advantage of that alpha. Does anybody here have that silver bullet? Do you think something else will emerge that's a new channel? Like, is that?
I think that even the existing ones are not kind of fully tapped out, right? And I think something that similar to like what David is building, right, could become a version of that.
Yeah, I think the merge between Yuri and David, is where I think email is going to come back into relevance. I think this pendulum is swinging back. We started automation by sending a gazillion of emails. I saw a LinkedIn post the other day of something bragging he said he sends 4 million a year. And you have an open rate of 0. whatever percentage. And where AI is going to come in and where network is going to come in and create the relevance of an email. The moment you have that relevance, it's not a question of whether you send 100 or whether you send 10. It's the question of the more relevant, the more engaged. And I think we will see that the moment you are able to send highly relevant from your main domain on, that's where you will see the whole thing swinging back. And Google are able and Microsoft are able to detect that the open rate for those emails are actually so high that they are not going to put you in the spam category. I think that's where, if you ask me, that's where I think the trend is going. I think
cool.
Spam is dying. It has shot itself in the foot. And it's so easy to detect. But sending a very, very relevant, based on network, based on contacts, based on referrals, on scale, using an AiSDR, you see, that's where the bang for the dollar is.
Yeah, I think that's a good Turing test of can you send this from your main domain? Are you comfortable enough to send this from your main domain? And if you are,
exactly.
then that's maybe interesting. So yeah, I mean, just to be clear, I definitely think that AI, for what it's worth, it's very possible AI can be leveraged to sift through all this data and enable us to send less email, not more. That's my kind of hopeful goal here is the paths actually kind of converge in the next few years. And in reality, it's we have these AI agents that are finding the most relevant people. So I don't have to send 4 million emails a year. I can only send 4,000 over the entire year, but those 4,000 are converting at 10x or 100x better.
Exactly.
I know we just have a few more. Yeah, go ahead.
Just quickly, I think the other thing to expand here, which is probably the missing piece that we've been talking about, cold outbound and sales, right? I think what we haven't really touched on is marketing, right? And building awareness. And that's kind of the, way that you sort of warm up and make people more open to cold outbound and they're more aware of you. Obviously, leveraging your network, you're leveraging the trust that already exists, right? Which is a form of kind of warming up that relationship. But I think there's going to be this evolution of the marketing function as well. We're already seeing this with founder-led content and people wanting to engage more with B2B influencers than the company, LinkedIn pages. I think this sort of trend and direction is also going to be something that's kind of intertwined with the future of sales, is the future of marketing. I'm not exactly sure how it's all going to play out, but the early signs of what we're seeing with the B2B influencers and the sort of content, at scale, and obviously the emergence back of conferences and in person, as Yuri was mentioning, getting on a plane to visit people. All of these different activities, I think, will be forming the playbook of the future where marketing and sales are kind of working together more hand in hand. And it's not so much like lobbing leads over the fence, it's more like how do we at scale nurture our entire market and warm them up so that sales activities can actually convert better, even if it is, potentially a cold email or whatever it is, whatever the channel is.
Yeah, I was going to say something very similar, which is just I feel like we've gotten sort of back to the basics of really adding value in marketing land to create awareness on the problem, how to think about the problem, et cetera. And then, I think that our best sellers on Koala are halfway into support land in their head. They're thinking how do I guide this person with a genuinely helpful email? And as soon as that sort of breakthrough happens where the person's oh, I'm not just getting pitched endlessly here, but this person is going to guide me through the process, that changes the entire dynamic of what happens next. Obviously a lot of work to go generate the awareness, the demand, the rep to take the time to read through the history and understand where someone's at. But I do think there's a lot of magic and efficiency with all of those steps. But it is funny. It is getting back to where we were 20 years ago, for sure, is what it feels like.
Back to rigor. You got to do the hard things. That's where the alpha is. That's what I'm hearing.
Yes, indeed.
No silver bullets. Amazing. All right. I know we're at time. This has been an amazing conversation. Thank you for joining and for sharing all y'all's wisdom. I assume everybody can find you on LinkedIn. Any final parting words from anyone before we sign off here? David, any last word from you? Thanks for putting this together.
I think, very true to the name. We've found out, it's going back to the data, right? We're going back to the past, what used to work, building authentic relationships and actually helping buyers, right from building awareness all the way through to implementation, and customer success, as Tito was saying. So I think there's a lot left to write, and we're all figuring this out together. But I really appreciate all your perspectives and trying to navigate the new world together.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you everybody for joining, and we'll see you on the interwebs.
Thank you.
Alrighty. See y'all.
Thanks all. See ya.